Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. I'm so glad that you're here. I've got a great story for y'all today. This lady is the one that sparks the affair of the poisons, and we have talked about this little group before. It is a group of royals that was within King Louis's court that were planning and scheming and buying poison from anybody and everybody that they could possibly get it from, basically. But this case right here is the one that sparks that whole entire investigation. And so it's kind of a long one. But anyways, if you're new here, my name is Brandy. What I do is I bring dark history stories back to life. Most of the time they're about witches. They could be about poisoners. They could be about werewolves, vampires, any of that dark stuff that we don't ever get to hear about. I bring it back to life. So while I do that, I put makeup on my face. I will list what I used on my face in the description below. And on that note, let's go on ahead and get this party started. So today we are in Paris, France. Okay, Paris, France. And we have a girl named Marie-Madeleine d'Aubray. All right, that's her born name. She was born on July 22nd of 1630. And she was born into a very rich family, very, very much so rich. Her dad had really, really strong ties to the king, King Louis. And so, she went to court. She was a royal. And she had a wealthy family and all this other fun stuff. She had a good life. And her father, his name was Anthony Drew d'Aubray, and he held, like I said, many government jobs, high-ranking jobs. He did a lot of stuff for the king and for people that also did stuff for the king. He did stuff for them. They were in court. They were part of King Louis's court. Marie was the oldest of 5 children, okay? And her mother's name was also Marie, so that's where she got her name from. And she was, you could say she was her father's favorite because she's the oldest. They were incredibly happy when she was born. Most of the time these families, they want a son first, like a son. When Marie was born, they were happy either way. It was a boy or a girl, they didn't care. They just had a healthy baby. So she was their first one. And so, of course, she had her daddy's heart. And kind of keep that in mind as we go through this, okay? But the only thing that sucks about being a girl back then is that when your parents passed, you don't inherit anything. So it's your job to go out and find somebody to marry that is rich and that will take care of you in the way that you need to be taken care of. Because like I say, she's a royal. She's from court. She's in King Louis's court now. So she has certain things that she has to do, certain rules she has to abide by, and all these other things. And so because her family was wealthy, she had a dowry that she would that the person would get whoever she decided to marry, and that dowry was 200,000 I'm not sure how to say this, lire. Is that how they say it? I never took French, I only took Spanish, so if I messed these words up, I'm so sorry, y'all. So in 1651, at the age of 21, Marie gets married. Okay, and she gets married to a man named Anthony Gobelin, and he was a baron. So yeah, you're thinking, okay, he's got tons of money, right? Like he had enough land and stuff like that was worth this 800,000 of the lires, or I'm not sure how to say that word. I feel awful. Anyways, where did he get his fortune from, you ask? Well, his family, he had a bunch of ancestors that were tapestry makers. And in this family, they ended up creating their own shops and things like that. So by the time he comes around, all he's got to do is collect money, because his family has set up these businesses of where, you go and get some kind of tapestry made. And they were very, very good at what they did. And so he was making a lot of money. So you think, okay, he gets her dowry. He's got his 800,000 whatever dollars. And he had this famed tapestry shop. Well, he also had another problem, unfortunately. And It's so sad that when these women think they found a good man that will take care of them, like they're supposed to, they're just doing what the social norms tell them to do, okay? To find a rich man and marry him. The least they could do is find one that ain't got no problems. Well, this one had a problem. He had a gambling issue, okay? And so in her mind, since she knows she's not going to be getting anything from her family if her dad dies, okay? She's not going to get anything because she's a girl. It's going to go to her brothers because she has brothers. And so she's kind of worried at this point, all right? And I don't think she likes her husband very much. Okay, I'm just going to say that because she goes on to have many, many lovers, like side pieces. Like, I mean, she had so many. And she actually had children with them too. So she had like 4 or 5 kids with her husband. And then like 2 or 3 kids with other guys. Okay. But it wasn't until she meets this guy named Sante LaCroix, okay? And this guy steals her heart. I mean, he just all of a sudden she falls in love with this man. And this is going to be her steady side piece for the rest of this story, okay? So Marie is having a grand old time, am I right? Yep, she is with her St. Croix guy, and she's living the life. Well, her dad finds out that she's taken like a steady lover, okay? I guess in French society back then, it was totally chill for the dude to have side piece. Like, I don't make it make sense. But it was not cool for the chick to do it. Not cool at all. Like, that's so backwards. I can't even make it make sense. But it is what it is. And her dad hears about this and he gets upset. He's like, look, you got to break it off with this guy. You're now, she started to separate her money from her husband's money. And in the eyes of her father, that's almost like divorce. Because you should be separating your money as a married couple is what they say. Okay, and obviously, if you do, it's totally chill because we do. We keep our stuff separate, over here in this household. But, it doesn't mean anything about divorce. It just means we do our own thing. It is what it is, So she's trying to hide money from this guy so that she can actually have money because she doesn't want them to be poor. So she's hiding money from him so he doesn't go and gamble it all away. And she tries to tell her dad this, but he's like, you know what, I don't care. I need you to stop seeing this Croix guy and, separate from him and be with your husband, basically. Like, support your husband's gambling addict and watch him have mistresses and things like that, and you just sit and cook and clean and have his children. And it wasn't just the fact that he was worried about his daughter, okay? Marie's dad was more worried about his reputation because of what she was doing than he was worried about her. He was more worried about his own reputation. And of course he was thinking of hers too, because a woman of court should not be going around and having, like a steady side piece or whatever. It's just for dudes to do, and you're not supposed to be hiding money from your husband because that means y'all might be having a divorce, and divorce could disgrace this family and make me just look like the worst dad in the entire world, This is what he was more worried about, was his reputation, how he looked to the outside world. God, I know exactly how that feels. Straight up. So her dad, having the king in his pocket, of course, like I said in the beginning, he knows the king. He does stuff for the king, and he works with the king. Like I said, they're in court. And so the king, he goes to the king, the father does, and says, I need you to write up a piece of paper to have this St. Croix guy arrested, okay, and have him put in the slammer. Now, there was this paper that was called a lettre de cachet. I'm hoping I'm saying that right. It was a piece of paper that was like a warrant for your arrest, only it was from the king himself. So there was no court anywhere that could overturn this. So if you got one of these letters by the king saying you are going to be arrested, there was no ifs, ands, or buts behind it. You were just going to be arrested. So this the St. Croix guy gets arrested, and he gets put in jail for 2 months. Now, here's where things start to get really, really interesting. He's in jail for 2 months, but while he's in there, he meets some fellow inmates. And what do? They teach him about poison. They do. They teach him all these different things, what to do, what kind of poisons, what they do. He learns, supposedly learning from these master guys that were, actually there was somebody in jail there that was the Queen of Sweden's, like, medicine alchemist guy. And because he was in France, King Louis had him put in jail because he was uncomfortable having this man in France, because France and Sweden were not chill at the time. And so he knew that, he thought that maybe this guy was coming to poison him. And so that's why they put him in jail. So now we got St. Croix, and we got this other guy who were in there just learning how to poison people and all this other stuff. So 2 months goes by, and St. Croix gets out of jail. Now, when he was released from prison, he ends up getting married. I'm guessing this is to kind of hide their relationship or whatnot, because he still continues to have a relationship with Marie. Okay, but he also has a relationship now with poisons. And he goes through all the things that he needs to do in order. He gets all the licensing that he needs to start like a little alchemy lab type deal. And he sets up everything. He has certain equipment to distill the poisons. He goes by the law, basically, during this time. If you wanted to be an alchemist, you had to make sure you went through the right portals and did everything so that you were legit. Because there were some people that were just making poisons on the side and selling them and stuff like that. The reason we talk about poisons a lot on this channel is because of King James and the way he named witches as poisoners. So that's why we talk about poison. Because witches were healers, shamans, all that fun stuff. And so to have a knowledge of herbs would mean that you would have to have a knowledge of poisons. So that if somebody came to you and they were poisoned and you knew what they were poisoned with, you would know how to cure it. Even though you may have the poison, you also have the cure. And so they had to know these types of things. And so he sets up a lab, like I say, starts distilling his poison, gains all the necessary licensing and everything that he needs. And under his teaching, Marie begins to learn poisoning, different kinds of poisons, different ways to do it. She learns all this from him, okay? And now she's starting to have an idea of revenge inside of her head, yes. Because you gotta imagine she's probably pretty mad at her dad for sending her lover to jail for 2 months. And now this has gotten him into a whole new business of being an alchemist and making poisons and tinctures and all that other fun stuff. So, but there was another kind of key thing here. Noble women would go to hospitals a lot. It was like part of their thing. They would go to hospitals and they would help nurse sick people. It was just part of the being a role of, of being a royal. And so what she would do is she would go to the hospital under the guise as somebody from court, one of the royals, and they were going to go see, and help heal people. Well, what she would do is she would test out her poisons on some of these people, her little concoctions that she made, to see if they worked, to see if they didn't work, to see what they would do, and all this other kinds of stuff. And it wasn't just patients that she would test this stuff on. Oh, no. She tested it on her family too, but don't worry, we'll get there. And so, of course, people started to pass away, and nobody really understood why, but they never thought of her because she's a royal. You know, this is how she gets away with all this for so long, because she is of court. Okay, nobody would suspect somebody and that's in court to do something like this, right? Of course not. And so, anyway, our girl is poisoning people at the hospital like it's nobody's business, testing out her poisons on anybody and everybody that she could possibly find. Not a problem. I mean, the hospital's full of sick people, you know. And this seemed satisfactory to her for a while. Even somebody said that she kind of enjoyed watching her poisons work. This is a little bit demented in my opinion. She enjoyed watching the effects. Yeah, it's kind of odd. So she would also experiment on her servants. Like I say, it wasn't just hospital, it wasn't just family. She'd be experimenting on her servants as well by poisoning their food, poisoning their drink, you know, just to see how far she could get. In 1666, her father starts to get sick, okay? But this is no surprise to our girl, Marie. No, this is not under any kind of surprise, because she was still mad at her dad for putting the man in prison for 2 months. So she is actually invited by her father. He says, hey, come over to the house, bring the kids, let's have a day, you know? And so they go and they stay with her dad, and she starts to slowly poison him. And after about a week or so, on September 10th of 1666, her father passes away from her poisoning him, okay? Now, nobody suspected anything, okay? Nobody suspected anything. And she even got a little bit of money out of this situation, okay? She did. It wasn't much, but you know, it was enough to help her out. She used something called Glasser's recipe, and Glasser was a man who was also known for his poisons as well. And this mixture would make it look like somebody died of natural causes. So when they did an autopsy, because of course back then they always did autopsies on the royals so they could find out what happened, it looked to them like it was totally fine, like it was a natural death. Yeah, she got away with it that time because she's noble, you know. So she's playing the grieving daughter, and at the same time, you know, she gets a little bit of money. She's not getting any land, or she's not getting the full title. Of course, all that like goes to her brothers. But don't worry, we're gonna get to the brothers in just a bit. Okay. This woman is very devious at this point. She's got plans, and she's gonna make them happen. It doesn't matter what happens. Like, these plans are gonna go down. So like I say, she does get a sum of money from her dad, but it doesn't last her long. No, it does not. After a while, she burns through it, you know. I imagine it's probably not that much because, like I say, she's a female, and she's not getting the full blown of what her dad has, and it's a lot. Okay, so she realizes, my brother's going to be getting everything. Maybe I should do something about that. Oh yeah, so she does. But she realizes she can't get close to them like she could her dad. Okay, she wasn't on as great of terms, because like I told you guys, she had a really good relationship with her dad, you know, until he did, you know, the thing with her lover and all that. But her and her brothers, not so much. And her two brothers lived in the same house. I'm pretty sure they were married, separate people. I'm not sure why they lived in the same house, but they did. And so Marie, like I say, was not on the best terms with them. So it's going to be harder to poison them. So she thinks, she's like, what am I going to do? How am I going to get into the house so that I can poison my brothers and I can get a bunch of money, you know? So she employs a guy named John Hamlin to work as a footman in the brother's house. Okay, and this is her plant or whatever. She's planted this guy. She's going to give this guy the poison. This poison, he's going to give it to the brothers, and things are going to go smoothly. So now we have Jean inside the house, and he's working as a footman, and he tries to poison one of the brothers. Well, one of them tastes this metallic taste, and he's just like, no, this can't be good. I'm not drinking this. And gets rid of it. So the first time, it didn't work so well. Well, so he was a little bit more sneaky about it the next time. He put the poison inside of a pie. And of course, he eats the pie, and he gets sick, and he ends up dying on June 17th of 1670. Okay, and this is her brother Antony. The second brother had died the same year, not long after the first one, and pretty much of the exact same causes as his brother. And so, for some reason, nobody saw this as suspicious. They did do autopsies, okay? They did. They found discoloration inside of the intestinal area, which could indicate poisoning, but it wasn't enough for them to say they were poisoned, okay? And so they basically said that they died of a malignant humor. Not sure what that is. Now, a lot of people suspected poison because of the closeness of the brothers passing, right? And this is kind of common sense. And of course, the way they died, they both died the same exact way. But Jean wasn't suspected because guess what? The brothers really liked Jean. They really got along with this footman guy that she had put in place. And when the first brother died, the first brother actually left him 100 lire or something like that in order, to show his gratitude for his service while he was alive. I mean, he literally paid the man that poisoned him and didn't even realize it. So Marie, she stays, and she just keeps poisoning. Yeah, she gets away with it for a while. She goes unnoticed all the way until 1672. And the death of her lover, her longtime lover, Saint Croix. It's hard to say his name for some reason. Anyway, so her lover, her all-time lover of all time, passes away. Her mentor on poisons, everything, he passes. And she knows that she is to receive a box that belongs to this man. And so it gets in the hands of somebody else first, because this box is very, very important and would be the beginning of her undoing. In this box were 9 letters detailing the deaths of Marie's brothers and father. Okay. And not only that, it contained poisons in vials and jars and stuff like that. Okay. Now, it was supposed to go to her, to Marie, right? But it didn't. It ended up in the commission's hand. His name is Picard. Some guy of the head of the commission. Can't talk today. Jean Hamlin, the guy that poisoned the brothers, goes to the police officer guy, Picard, and is like, hey, St. Croix owed me money. Do you have this box? Because he knew of the box too. Well, the police officer tells him, well, you know a lot about the contents of this box, and I'm here to tell you that there's 9 letters in here incriminating people that are doing poisonings. And so what does Jean do? He turns around and he just walks right out the police station I am in trouble. I'm done for. You know what I mean? And so he left really quickly, but it wasn't too much long before they went and they interrogated him, where he implicated himself and Marie for the crimes against her family. Okay, he was tortured and killed on March 24th, 1673, and the same day a warrant went out for Marie's arrest. All right, so you're thinking, okay, so we're good. She's gonna be arrested, right? No. The thing about Marie, though, she already dipped out. She pieced out way before she knew of the box, and she knew that she didn't get it. So she dipped out before they even had the warrant out for her arrest. And she started hiding out in England. She evaded the police for years, okay? I mean, she moved different places, was moving to different countries, and she had to live on the money, just a little bit of money that her sister would send her. It wasn't until she was in Belgium that she got busted, okay? She went to Belgium and she stayed in a convent. And the authorities recognized her and alerted the French. And were like, hey, guess what? Guess who we found? Yeah. And so once they recognized her, they went on ahead and they arrested her and everything. And they were waiting for the French authorities to come to Belgium and grab her. And among her things, and I will never understand why people do this. If you want to get away with something, don't write it down. Just don't, you know. I mean, keep it up here. I'm not trying to give you like details on how to do crimes, trust me, because I'm not the one. But I'm just saying, don't write down the things that you do that you don't want anybody else to know, okay? Because she writes a whole letter titled My Confessions. Yeah. Which detailed various crimes that she had committed over the years. Like straight up was just like, yeah, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this here. And let me tell you, in the letter, it admits to her poisoning her dad and her two brothers. She also attempted to poison her daughter, her sister, and her husband. Yeah, the husband almost got the guy. This one, close. He almost did, but he survived, okay? She confessed to her many affairs and that 3 of her children were not her husband's, just like I told you guys in the beginning. This chick, I cannot believe she wrote all that down in a letter. Why would you do that? Why? Why would you do that? That is not the smart thing to do. You know what happened? It's up here. That's the only place to... Anyway, let's just go ahead and move forward. So, as she is taken back to Paris, she tries to take herself out of this world on her own hand many times on the way back to France, okay? She tries to take her own life. And it's obviously unsuccessful, you know, but she does. And knowing that she was done. I mean, she was busted and she was a court royal, and this was not going to be a good thing for her when she got back to France, you know. And so that's why she was trying to find a way out, but they wouldn't let her do it. And so she gets back to Paris, France, and they put her in jail. And this is a noble putting in jail. Like, it's just absolutely nuts. So she's interrogated. Now, they don't torture during their interrogation during this time. Okay? They don't. But she denied. She was like, when she first questioned, she acted like she didn't know nothing. She was like, I didn't do anything. No, that wasn't me. I didn't make any poisons. I don't know what you're talking about. She tried to put it all on St. Croix. Yeah. Tried to put it all on him and say, this was his doing, you know. I never did anything to my family, even though you have a letter saying my confessions. And then you've got St. Croix, who wrote 9 letters detailing all of the murder and stuff that they did. Like, what? So while she's in court, since she decides she's going to deny, one of her former lovers testified that she had told him what she had did to her dad and to her brothers. Yeah. And that the 2 had actually tried to poison him. So this was not good. This is not good for Marie. Not good at all, okay? So Marie said, he's a drunk. Yeah, that my ex-lover, he's a drunk dude. Don't listen to him. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He's just a drunk guy So, but anyway, nobody believed Marie. No, they didn't believe that of what she said, anything. And so her sentencing was to be tortured and then beheaded and burned. Okay. And so once she hears this, that she's going to be tortured, she starts to admit to things because she thinks that maybe this will get her out of the torture, right? You know, because she's thinking, hey, if I admit to it, they won't torture me. You know, normally they don't torture you if you admit to it. Well, it was a little late for that. It was a little late because this was part of her punishment. So what was her torture, you wonder? Well, her torture was this. She went through the water cure. What is the water cure, you ask? Well, I shall tell you. The water cure is when they stretch your body backwards over a wheel. So we're kind of putting the wheel in this, only we're not rolling anybody down a hill. And so that their body is like this and they're facing up, and they put a funnel in their mouth and they put all of this water and they fill their body full of water. And as you know, when you do and you drink a whole lot of water like that, you can poison yourself, okay? But this was just like the worst kind of torture. I mean, it's headaches, it's pains, it's everything that you could possibly think of. They had to intake this huge amount of water. And like I say, she tried to say, okay, I did it, you know, to get this torturing and things to stop. But it was too much. It was too far beyond that. This was her punishment. She had no choice. She was going to have to go through this. Her confession started implicating other royals as well. And this is what starts to really worry King Louis, okay? Because she's naming other royals in court that are buying poisons. She also said that she confessed to selling poison to a man who wanted his wife to pass, okay? And then she was paraded to her execution. She was barely covered. They shaved her head. Kind of think of like Cersei, like walking through on Game of Thrones. That, okay? They paraded her through town like that because she was a higher up, you know? This is a big deal to have somebody in your own court be a poisoner, you know, your own royalty. And so barely covered, head shaven, and then they beheaded her and then they burned her at the stake. Her confessions sent shockwaves through the royal community, let me tell you. She started naming all kinds of folks, and King Louis establishes the affair of the poisons, which is basically a team of people that's going to find out who in his court is poisoning, because they have had many mysterious deaths and they were trying to figure out what was going on. Sorry, Popcorn's up walking around with her ADD. Yeah. So King Louis starts sending out people and they start questioning these groups and they normally wouldn't question. They were questioning fortune tellers, mediums, ex-priests, all kinds of people about what's going on. You know, who's doing the poisoning, who's making these poisons, who are they buying it from, where are they getting it? And so these people, they're saying, hey, people are selling aphrodisiacs to a number of French nobles. That's what he found out, okay? They were buying inheritance powder. What is inheritance powder? Well, I'll tell you that too. Inheritance powder is a mix of arsenic, opium, belladonna, and aconite, which I'm not sure what that poison is. I haven't gotten that far yet. But the most predominant name during this whole affair of the poisons is Lavoisian, Catherine Montboyson. And we actually did her probably like maybe the second or third episode when I started doing this YouTube. And she was very, very interesting. It's a really, really good video. You guys should go back and watch it. I'll post it up here at the top. But she was one of the main ones in this. And her story is absolutely off the wall, incredible. But because of Marie's affairs and her misdeeds and her poisonings, and coming from this morbid curiosity of her wanting to kill with poison, it was unheard of for a royal court and for her lover's letters along with her confession letter, I mean, it gave King Louis this huge mistrust inside of his own royal court, and he couldn't have that. You know, people were disappearing. Something was happening to his court, and he didn't know what. And so he went through this whole entire deal to make sure that he could find out who they were. No one was safe in his eyes. No one was safe. No one. He was convinced that Marie didn't act alone. He even started an inquest into people that was involved with Marie and her poison. And many of the high position people in court were arrested and tried for murder and witchcraft. Yeah, they were. So if you're a royal and you got busted, you ended up, if you weren't using poison, then you were doing witchcraft, and that was just as bad. Okay. And so this opened up a whole Pandora's box of poisoners, and that's where you go into Lavoisian and all these other poisoners if you want to jump into that video. It's a really, really good one. But this is the story of the Baroness, not the Baroness. Well, I guess she is a Baroness because she married a Baron. But Marie d'Aubray is very cruel. And I understood that she wasn't going to get inheritance, and that's why she was killing her dad and then killed her brothers to make sure that the money would somehow come to her because she was the firstborn, right? But I think that because when she got married and she realized that the man that she was with wasn't going to take care of her, that he was just going to gamble away all their money, including her dowry, she wasn't down with that whatsoever. And the fact that she had many lovers, I mean, France was a different place back then. It was, they say that the women weren't supposed to do that, but of course it's the royal women that can't do that, But the men absolutely could. It was not a problem. But for her dad to be embarrassed by her actions and being afraid that his reputation is on the line, like, give me a break. Like, think about your daughter for a second. You're putting her through this. You're going to have her man arrested. She's already married to a guy that she's given him children. She's done her job in that situation. In her mind, she's done her job. I've given you kids. You have my money. Blah, blah, blah. All this other stuff. And now I have lovers, and that's just the way it's going to be. That's the way she was. So, but that is the story of Marie d'Aubray. Her court case is the one that sparked the whole affair of the poisons involving Lavoisian and other poisoners as well. So that's our story for today, you guys. And I hope that you guys really liked it. I enjoyed researching it, and I know it's kind of long, but it's a good one. It's a good one. And yes, definitely go watch Lavoisian. I'm going to tag it above, and I'm going to put it in the description below. But if nobody's told you today, I love you, and I hope that you guys have a wonderful week.